If I asked you to think of the most famous person in the world right now, you'd probably think of a really well-known pop star, or a religious figure, maybe even a historical figure. Whether you're involved in pop culture or not, there will inevitably be big names that you recognize along with everyone else on the planet. Think of the big names that we all recognize, like Michael Jackson, Marilyn Monroe, Abraham Lincoln, Taylor Swift, Gandhi, Moses. Today, these are all household names. It would be incredibly hard to find someone who has never heard of any of these people. Because, well, they're famous. But the concept of fame has been reshaped by the digital landscape into something far more complex and multifaceted than just people whose names we know. Today, fame isn't rare, and building a huge audience isn't quite as unique as it once was. In the last 20 years or so, fame has fundamentally changed, and so today, on The Rabbit Hole, we're going to talk about it.
Now you're entering the rabbit hole. Yeah, yeah, tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow.
Today, let's explore the evolution of fame in the age of the internet. Because we now live in a digital world, fame as we know it has changed. I'm going to go through these changes that I've been noticing for the past few years throughout this episode, and I'm going to talk about how things like tech and social media have contributed to the way fame has evolved into what it is today. But keep in mind that just because I say something doesn't mean it's true. I'm just thinking out loud here. So let's first talk about fame on a grand scale. About 50 to 60 years ago, fame was rare. Only a couple decades ago, fame was only accessible to a select few who had the talent. People who had charisma and often the luck to captivate the public. You needed that it factor, as they say, to even stand a chance at fame back then. But fast forward to today, and it seems like anyone can be famous. If you have access to the internet, fame is only a touch away. You can go viral overnight. Social media grants us the opportunity to show ourselves to the entire world from the comfort of our own homes. So in 2024, fame isn't really so rare. I'd argue that it's almost an expectation even. You know, like it feels like any Joe Schmo can go viral on TikTok, so why not you? I'll get into more of that later, but for now I want to discuss the different ways that I notice that fame has changed in the digital era. So obviously fame has changed a lot in terms of reachability, but something else that I've noticed that's shifted for fame in the digital era is that the non-famous, aka the common folk, have something that we didn't before: the power to make people famous. If you think about it, the power to make someone famous used to lie in the hands of people like agents, directors, record labels, managers, but today fame is given by us, the common people. Like if enough of us like a post on TikTok, it can change someone else's life overnight. You can tweet a photo of someone you think looks funny and turn them into a viral meme. We hold a lot of power when it comes to creating famous people these days. Think about Charlie D'Amelio. I don't know how many of you guys had TikTok when Charlie D'Amelio was initially blowing up, and I've tried to look up sources online that accurately answer the question of like why Charlie D'Amelio became so famous so quickly on TikTok, but none of them have the firsthand experience that I think only an elite few have, aka the people who were on TikTok in like 2019 and before that. Um, but if you look it up, it just says, she posted dance videos and whatever. But if you were on TikTok during 2019, you'll remember the actual reason Charlie D'Amelio became famous. And it wasn't because she was a great dancer, which she was/is, but it was for another much stupider reason. And not anything that was her fault. The reason Charlie started gaining followers like crazy in 2019 was because people on TikTok wanted to delegate hype to a single user. And she was voted most deserving of the hype. I kid you not. I was on TikTok when this was all happening, but I can't find it anywhere online. Like nobody can back me up on that in articles. But if you were on TikTok back then, like you remember. I know there's one guy who was on TikTok during that time. Maybe I'll reach out to him and get him to see if he remembers. But it was back when there were no famous people on TikTok, so it was, actually fun to be on TikTok. And the For You page was universal, as in everyone saw the same videos for the most part. It wasn't like, oh, I'm on this side of TikTok, I didn't see that. It was all one thing. Like a video going viral would mean that it had 10,000 likes, you know? But I remember there was this whole campaign from users, not a company or anything, but from the users of TikTok who kept being like, who has the hype? Who's worth the hype? And then it was decided that Charlie D'Amelio, who had been making dancing videos pretty consistently, deserve the hype. She even joined the Hype House with other TikTok stars like Chase Hudson. So it was very much so a people's effort. It was the people on the app. It wasn't any agents. It wasn't anyone professional. It was just a bunch of people who were bored. And everyone at the time was very pro making Charlie famous because they truly and honestly felt like she deserved to be famous. She was a relatable, shy girl who just liked posting on TikTok, like many users back then. But cut to present day, and people don't feel the same way anymore. People feel like she's not relatable anymore, or they think, what has she done to deserve this? She has no talent, she's a sellout, blah, blah, blah. And it all comes down to this idea that because we, the people, made her famous, we see firsthand what that power was able to give to her. And we get jealous, and we want to take back what we gave, because why her? And then people start to think, okay, well, if I had the power to give her that, I surely have the power to take it away, right? But that's something that we tend to forget, and that's that even though we may have assisted in the process, once the bird flies from the nest, that's it, they're off. We have no control when someone is already out there. Their name is now known, and you can't undo that. And it's this idea that people feel a loss of control with the people they made famous that I think is what actually fosters cancel culture. Now, this episode is not about cancel culture. It's about fame. So I'm not going to elaborate too much on cancel culture because I'd love to discuss that in length in another episode. However, a discussion about modern fame would be incomplete without addressing it. So cancel culture, as you already probably know, is the concept of holding public figures accountable for their actions, usually in a way that's detrimental to their career. It's obviously not that simple because on top of putting people in their place, it also raises a lot of questions about forgiveness and control. According to Lisa Nakamura, University of Michigan professor of media studies, cancel culture is, quote, ultimate expression of agency, which is, quote, born of a desire for control as people have limited power over what is presented to them on social media. I thought this was so cool because it means people lean into cancel culture because we live in a time when our feeds are so curated for us. So if we see something that we don't align with, we want to eliminate it from our sites. So while there are bad things that a celebrity might say or do, the people ultimately hold the authority on determining what is actually bad. But what SpongeBob Lover 69 might think is bad is not the same thing as what Slytherin 92 might think is bad. So cancel culture is very fluid in terms of who's actually responsible for deciding what is worthy of a cancel and what isn't. Personally, I don't think anyone should be canceled per se because forgiveness is a virtue that I think a lot of people lack nowadays, but I could talk about that in another episode. Anyways, when you think about why canceling a person is even a thing, it really comes down to the nature of fame in the digital era. You know, performing 24/7 without a break. Today, being famous isn't just about being recognized anymore. It's also about living your life under a constant microscope. Social media has basically torn down the walls between public and private life. So if you're famous, everything you do, from what you eat for breakfast to who you hang out with, is fair game for public consumption. Because of social media, every moment of a celebrity's life is accessible. Look at Elvis Presley. In the 50s, Elvis was arguably one of the most famous people alive. And yet, we didn't really know all that much about his day-to-day. Sure, when he was interviewed, he'd answer questions, but once the camera stopped rolling, his life was a mystery. I actually asked my dad what it was like back then to confirm, because my dad was really into old-age celebrities. And he said that, yeah, you thought celebrities were just like how they were in interviews because you didn't know what they were like outside of interviews. You didn't have the internet to check. He said it was like this big unknown, what celebrities were actually like behind the cameras. Icons like Frank Sinatra and Marilyn Monroe lived their lives in a series of carefully curated images and appearances. It was this big mystery, this status, this lifestyle of the elite. But now, today, the line between fame and ordinary life has become increasingly blurred. Today's celebrities navigate a world where every tweet, every Instagram post, and every TikTok video is scrutinized, dissected, and debated by the public. Social media has created what I like to call this funnel of perpetuity. There's no more BRB. We're always online. And so are celebrities. So they could tweet on the toilet, share pictures of their breakfasts and vacations on Instagram, and make a TikTok with a celebrity friend when they meet up for dinner. Once, we would have never known about the after hours of a celebrity's life. And now we know almost too much. The more content we have on someone, the more we can pick them apart. And the more we realize that celebrities are just like us, and it kind of makes us annoyed. On top of that, there's not really such a thing as privacy for celebrities anymore. It's assumed that if you're going to be famous, you're going to perform all the time on social media. So you have to be on 24/7 instead of just in interviews or in public. Like if social media didn't exist, the royal family would never have had to respond to any conspiracy theories about Princess Kate while she was undergoing cancer treatment. But because of the nature of fame today, they had no choice. They had to update the people because now that's the status quo. These constant updates allow us to put celebrities under a microscope. But when you really learn who a celebrity who appears to be perfect and unproblematic and a beacon of hope is, you realize they're just another human, and it shatters this illusion of status and perfection and the dream. And so you begin to resent them and everything they have. Kind of seems like all roads lead to cancel culture. But anyways, another thing that really stands out to me about fame today, and this is such an interesting phenomenon that I've noticed over the past couple of years, is that fame is diluted. Like I mentioned earlier, anyone can be famous. And so there are way more famous people around today than there were like 50 years ago. Platforms like TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and all the different streaming services create more opportunities for exposure to become famous. So people are able to become famous way quicker and in larger numbers than ever before. But a side effect of that is that we enter this new realm of fame where we have micro audiences. Let me try to explain what I mean. Micro audiences are niche communities online. Because of social media, people can achieve celebrity status within small niche communities. Someone that I consider famous, my friend might not have ever heard of. How many times has your friend asked you, like, oh, you know that guy that's all over TikTok? You know who I'm talking about? I forgot his name. He's like the guy who does impressions. He's been blowing up. You know who I'm talking about. And you have no idea who they're talking about. That's because whoever they are talking about belongs to a niche audience, and your friend happens to be part of it. And I've noticed that the more and more diluted fame becomes, the more difficult it is to relate to people. The music we listen to, the movies we watch, the people we follow, they become more and more niche as we interact with the content. And slowly we move farther and farther away from the community in the real world. We've never heard of the artist our friend loves, and they've never heard of the TV show I just started watching. The experience of bonding over shared interests becomes harder and harder as all this content becomes more and more saturated. But don't get me wrong, there are good things about so many people having the opportunity to be known, but everything comes at a price. We may have found a community online, but in turn we may have lost our sense of community in real life. Here's another great example of a micro audience. Look what's happening right now as you're listening to this podcast. I am the textbook definition of a Joe Schmo. But somehow I was able to reach you, and now you know who I am. And if you don't, I'm Tamar Cement. But I just exist on one corner of the internet that you happen to have found. But there are thousands, if not millions, of other corners of the internet where people form communities and have people that share content with a larger crowd that some of us may never know about. Think about the household names that you recognize. I'll throw a few out for you. Quentin Tarantino, LeBron James, Ariana Grande, Kim Kardashian, Brad Pitt, Madonna. Now think of someone you consider famous, who's actually just a niche celebrity to you. I can name a bunch, and they're all influencers. The reason it's so much more difficult for a new name to become a household name is because there's just too many different people who are in the spotlight on a given day. Which brings me to my next point about fame, which is that fame has become ephemeral, aka fame is fleeting. Fame today is not only more attainable, it's also insanely volatile. Stories of Vine stars fading into obscurity highlight the temporary nature of digital age fame. Fame used to be this untouchable club where only the best of the best could know what it's like, but now everyone can get their 15 seconds of fame and know what it's like. When something goes viral, everyone sees it for a minute and then moves on to the next best thing. Although technically speaking, the word viral has completely lost all meaning because of the saturation of content. Like, something that's viral used to be like Gangnam Style or David After Dentist, where literally every person with internet access saw it. And now it's like, oh, this person's video has a little more attention than it normally would. I guess it's going viral. We've lost the plot, but I digress. People become hot topics very quickly, and then, as we say, they fall off. We've seen it with the Vine stars, and we see it with content creators in general. Part of it has to do with the fact that famous people are in charge of their own image now, and part of it has to do with the fact that there's just too many people with public profiles that we see on a given day. If I'm being honest, I think the largest distinction to make is that being a famous content creator is a much different kind of fame than we're used to thinking about when we think of famous people. The internet has brought the idea of becoming famous to the forefront of many people's minds. But it's not like Marilyn Monroe fame or Audrey Hepburn fame, with cameras flashing and red carpets and everyone wondering what she's going to do next and where she's going after the interview. It's like the diluted version of fame, where everyone knows what you're doing 24/7, and your social profiles are a public portfolio of everything you know how to do within the realm of entertainment. That's probably why so many people who blow up on TikTok suddenly start releasing music. It's not that they can't sing or don't sing, it's just that now they have an audience, so they're adding more to their portfolio. Like, hey, you like my acting? Wait till you hear me sing. I can do it all. And it's similar in a way to old school fame, because when you have an agent, they ask you what you know how to do. Like, okay, you can act, but can you sing? You know, I could get you more gigs if you can sing. Can you dance? Would you pose nude? Would you host an event? The more you add to your portfolio as an entertainer, the more valuable you appear to be. Like, what can't she do? She's so good at everything. And so it makes sense that people would want to do it all on their social pages. But when everyone's doing that, it becomes a lot more difficult to stand out. Part of the reason fame changed so much, like I said before, is because we're in control of our own image. And what that does is it opens up the possibility of fame to people who didn't have the privilege of affording an agent back then, or someone who just didn't have the kahunas to entertain full time. So now that all you need to be famous is technically a phone with internet, everyone feels like they have a real chance to be famous. If Emma Chamberlain became famous because she had a camera and internet access, why can't I do the same? If Addison Rae can become famous and the only tool she used was her phone, then fame doesn't have to be a dream. It can be a reality for anyone. And in some ways, it is. Because even if you're not trying to be famous, most people on social media live their lives as if they are, documenting every event they go to, maintaining their own online image to make sure they look presentable at all times, and making sure to keep everyone who follows them updated on their life. I know I sound like a cynic whenever I talk about social media, but it's interesting to me that we kind of created this phenomenon where we act like mini celebrities to our friends and family in the way that we share things on social media. It's become normal to post important milestones on social media and let everyone know what the great John Doe is up to on a Thursday night. Bo Burnham once said something that really resonated with me that kind of has to do with this. I'll play the clip of what he said for you because maybe it'll resonate with you too. By the way, I do not own this next audio clip. This is Bo Burnham and Netflix. They own all rights over what you're about to hear. Please don't remove this episode.
Social media, it's just the market's answer to a generation that demanded to perform. So the market said, here, perform everything to each other all the time for no reason. It's prison. It's horrific. It is performer and audience melded together. What do we want more than to lie in our bed at the end of the day and just watch our life as a satisfied audience member? I know very little about anything, but what I do know is that if you can live your life without an audience, you should do it.
So I mentioned at the beginning of this episode that something new about fame is the fact that people have more control over a celebrity's success. And I think this became a lot more evident after the Met Gala last year. After the Met Gala, people started to get kind of annoyed with celebrities. People were saying it was $75,000 a ticket and $300,000 a table. And it seems like all the money that normal people struggle to make was just being thrown around like it was nothing. And so people online got really upset about it. There are also a lot of videos that were circulating the internet comparing the Met Gala to the Hunger Games. Like, the people in the Met Gala were like the people in the Capitol, and we were like the districts that had no money, and we were just kind of watching them because we had no choice. It was a whole thing. People got really upset. And it made sense, you know, seeing a lot of money being used for something so showy and materialistic instead of for like charity or something a little more wholesome isn't such a great feeling. But what happened after the Met Gala online was something that I've never seen before. and something that has a lot to do with what I'm talking about today. A trend started to emerge on TikTok called the celebrity blockout. People started using the hashtag blockout 2024 to encourage people to block celebrities on social media. I was like totally fascinated because I had been starting to like research this topic, and I started to see that people were kind of validating all of the stuff that I had been finding. People were sharing the view that we do have more control over a celebrity's success than we originally thought. And people would post lists of the celebrities that they were blocking. Okay, this week I'm blocking XYZ celebrity. And I think a lot of the reason was because people felt like I'm being shown all these people's content. I never really wanted to be so involved in their life, but because they're a celebrity, I feel obligated to keep up with them. But in reality, I don't want to. I don't resonate with the things that they care about. They don't resonate with the things I care about. Like, I just would rather follow someone who has more aligned values as me. So this actually was put into practice because Kim Kardashian lost 3 million followers during this campaign. And initially I was like, whoa, like power to the people. The fact that 3 million people could do that, it's wild. Just from a little hashtag. But then I was like, it's Kim Kardashian. She has what, 350 million other followers? It's not going to make that much of a dent. But I was also wondering why that might be, because you would think that if a celebrity relies on an audience so much, that 3 million people leaving that audience would have such a big impact. But what I realized was that social media fame doesn't always dictate real world fame. And I think that's something that's really important to note when talking about fame in the digital era, which is that there is a clear distinction between the A-list celebrities who have quote unquote true celebrity status, like Marilyn Monroe, Kim Kardashian, Brad Pitt, and the social media fame, people like Bella Poarch and James Charles and David Dobrik. On social media, stars are at the constant mercy of their followers or supporters. If they do one thing that doesn't align with the masses, they can literally lose everything. It's almost like we've accidentally created this sub-level of fame where someone who's famous from social media can be known by as many people as an A-list celebrity, but they're treated much differently. And they don't have that same security of having a career after a bad PR moment. And so what's interesting to me about all this is that people whose fame transcends social media will still be famous if social media disappeared. But people who rely on apps for their fame will most likely be forgotten. There's a clip somewhere from an awards show last year of Billie Eilish saying something like, "Are there TikTokers here?" Like you can see her mouthing that to someone, which shows that, yeah, social media stars do belong to a different classification of fame. And people know who they are, they know their names, but they aren't seen as true famous people. Now, you might be wondering, well, Tamar, there has always been levels of fame. A-listers, B-listers, D-listers, and so on. This isn't new. But I'm not saying that there are less famous people in the realm of fame as a whole. I'm saying that there are people who are as known and as famous as A-listers, but who are not accepted as A-listers strictly because they used social media as their avenue to stardom. Maybe I'm just vouching for social media stars to be treated like real celebrities, although I don't think we need more celebrities. But at the same time, it's strange that more people recognize the name Mr. Beast but not Cleo Thomas. Although if Mr. Beast was at an awards show, people would still think it's strange. Unless it was like the YouTube Awards or something in that realm of award shows. But yes, I see the point in separating internet fame with outside internet fame. But I also think that filmmaking is filmmaking, and acting is acting. And whether you're on stage or behind a camera, your talents are talents no matter what. I don't know. Maybe I may have podcasted a little too close to the sun today, because I'm not really sure how I got to this point. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that it was interesting to see celebrities being blocked by us, by the common folk. Because even if people meant it negatively, the sentiment remained the same among us, which is that we do feel like we have control over a celebrity's life today, because we're the people who consume and buy the things that they sell, even if it's just ad space on a public profile. But in reality, some famous people are untouchable, and they do have that elite status that people dream of, and most people will never reach. I think the Met Gala fiasco of last year reminded all of us that as much as we feel close to celebrities, true celebrities, as much as we see their normal lives broadcasted on social media, and as much as we think they are just like us, they aren't. Because if celebrities were just like us, then why aren't we like them? The term famous has changed drastically over time. Once upon a time, celebrities were strictly known by their reputation, and they led much more private lives that were fascinating for people like us to wonder about. Then the internet came along and made it easier for information about celebrities to spread like wildfire, regardless of how accurate it was. And on top of that, the amount of famous people jumped dramatically because of how simple it was to create content online and share it with the world, which leveled the playing field and removed that rare status from just celebrities. Household names became less and less common because micro-audiences started to form. As I was researching this topic, I came across a page on Quora that answered a question about this that I thought summed it up pretty well. So to quote the great Quora user Nasuno, the less of something there is, the more valuable it is. Now, people can keep minute-to-minute track of people they're interested in. And surprise, they're just normal sods like the rest of us. And the dilemma is, when anyone can be famous, does anyone deserve it? Wow, what an episode. I have to say, this has been probably one of my favorite episodes to delve into. I know it's still the beginning stages of this podcast, but this topic is so interesting and no one talks about it. No one talks about how different fame is now. So I did. I hope it made sense. I know sometimes I can be all over the place, but I just have to get all these thoughts off my chest, you know. Anyways, let's talk homework assignment. For this week's homework assignment, I want to encourage you to think about someone that you interact with / consume. That sounds like a cannibal. Not eat, but someone whose content you consume. Someone whose content you consume online that you consider to be known. You know who they are, you know their name. If someone mentioned their name, you'd be like, yeah, I know who that is. And think about them. Hopefully it's someone that you enjoy their content, and reach out to them. Take advantage of the fact that you have access to someone that you admire. I think people take for granted how much we have today. The fact that somebody that you genuinely appreciate and keep up with doesn't know who you are, but could, is so cool. The fact that you can just see what happens if you message someone directly on Instagram or on Discord or TikTok messages. It's just so cool. And I feel like sometimes people assume that because someone is becoming popular or because somebody has a lot of followers, that it means that they're unreachable, they're untouchable. And I'm not encouraging you to harass people. Please don't do that. But I am saying a positive to the modern age fame is that celebrities are more attainable. They are more reachable. They are more down to earth. So I encourage you to message a creator that you like, somebody who you think is attainable to garner a response, and just let them know, hey, I think you're cool, and I think it's cool that I can tell you that. I don't know, maybe it's a dumb homework assignment, but I think it could be fun. But anyways, thank you so much for listening. And I do want to say that this whole episode was about fame and how it's changed. One thing that I think has remained the same that I think is important to note is that fame is still difficult for people. I know we all think it's sunshine and butterflies and living the rich lifestyle and getting everything you want, but if there's anything I've learned from being a creator and from seeing other creators, it's that even though fame is clearly very different today, the mental health struggles that come with it are still very real. And so I know I'm talking a lot about yeah, anyone can be famous. Why doesn't everyone get famous? It's not hard. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, I know I've been talking a lot about how fame is so easy. You could just get famous if you have a phone. Obviously, there are more steps that are involved in it, but I'm not downplaying the mental health problems that come with it. It's a very big problem, and I think it's just one of those things that you have to trade off. You know, you get to be known and you have attention, but you have mental health problems that you have to grapple with every day. Anyways, I didn't mean to end on a depressing note, but I just wanted to make sure everyone knows that I don't think fame is all handy dandy lollipops. I think it's very much a complex situation for someone. But anyways, thank you so much for listening. I realized I was like babbling towards the end, but it's my podcast. I can do what I want. And you can too, thanks to the internet. So thanks for listening. Catch you next time on The Rabbit Hole. Thank you so much for tuning into The Rabbit Hole. If you have any topic requests, questions, concerns, or anything you'd like to share with me, please send an email to rabbitholevibes@gmail.com. That's rabbitholevibes@gmail.com. For more video content, follow @TamaraCement on TikTok and Instagram. And to stay in the loop, join the Discord family with the link in my bio. The Rabbit Hole is produced by yours truly, Tamara Cement, and our song is produced by Jared Jones, so go check him out. His Instagram is @JREDJONES. And a special shout out to the Detroit Lions. We love you. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope we can hang out again soon. And don't forget to wear your retainers.